Areas of Marcon 2021 include reaching out to markets in a post-pandemic era, bringing the light the latest tools and trends in marketing, highlighting how technology goes hand in hand with marketing these days, broadening the customer base, which is no longer restricted to only urban or local, realigning marketing strategies to match with current customer expectations. Before we kickstart this discussion, I would like to take this opportunity to quickly thank our partners, our cloud communication partner, Root Mobile, our sessions partner, Iab Tech Lab, partnership with Pubmatic, our gold partner, LogicServe Digital, our sessions partner, Agraya, our knowledge partner, Chintan. Without further delay, I would like to introduce you to this session. This session is a panel discussion on the topic Building Trust and Transparency in the Programmatic Ecosystem. And for this introduction of the session, it is with great pleasure that I would like to welcome Mr. Shivendra Misra, Director APAC, Iab Tech Lab. We welcome you, Shivendra. Over to you. Shivendra, you're on mute.
Shivendra, maybe just remove the headset and just try with the computer directly.
No, I can't. I don't think we can. I think you should log out and join in. Yeah. Yeah, I think he's back.
Yes, I am back. Sorry
Yes,
for
we
everyone
can
for
hear
the
you.
glitch.
No problem. Just a part and parcel of an online event.
So very quickly, my privilege to welcome everybody onto the panel for building trust and transparency for the programmatic ecosystem. Very quickly, we have Anushrav Gulati from Times Internet representing the publisher side. We have Chintan Soni, Vice President Digital from Madison World to represent the buy side. We have Pranjal Desai, the country manager of MediaMath, to represent the DSP side, and Harguneet from Pubmatic to represent the supply side. This is all the facets of the entire programmatic value chain are represented here. And to bring it at the end, we have Shailley Singh, who is the Senior Vice President Products from Iab Tech Lab. I'll just take a moment to talk about Iab Tech Lab because most of the other organizations are well known in India. In the Indian context, possibly Iab Tech Lab is a new player. So I'll just share my screen and take 2 minutes to run a very quick presentation of 2 slides on what Iab Tech Lab is. Everybody can see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Welcome to the speakers again. Very quickly, Iab Tech Lab is a global member community to develop the foundational technology and standards that enable growth and trust in the digital media ecosystem. When we mean organization, we are a neutral, collaborative, transparent, non-profit global organization. What we move by foundational technology is all technologies that help us transact programmatically in a transparent, frictionless marketplace across all platforms, devices, and mediums such as connected TV, video, audio, mobile, and display on internet. And the kind of standards that we have been built is things that you may have well-known names: OpenRTB, VAST, the consent framework, Open Measurement Sdk, adopted by a lot of companies to measure their video advertising, CIMED, all well-known terms for the global ad technology industry. So Iab Tech Lab has been center of developing all these standards. And Our work is possibly divided into 4 pillars, as we call: identity, data privacy, brand safety and ad fraud, ad experiences and measurement, programmatic effectiveness. Today, the topic of focus is programmatic effectiveness and transparency, and I will quickly pass on to Shailley and Harguneet to lead into the power-packed session without wasting any time. Let me just stop my presentation. Harguneet and Shailley, over to you.
Well, thank you, Shivendra. And once again, welcome everyone to the Building Trust and Transparency in the Programmatic Ecosystem session today. Over the last 10 years, programmatic method of advertising has become the lifeblood of the open web. It helps millions of publishers to express their voice on the internet and help monetize and earn a livelihood through the internet. It also is a fascinating technology system with billions and billions of transactions taking place every day at lightning speed, settling transactions within a millisecond time frame. For all of that to happen, it is really important that all the participants in the ecosystem trust each other and are able to transact with each other with confidence. And that's why building the trust is really important. And our work at Tech Lab as a global trade organization that supports the ad tech industry with technical standards, software, and compliances has been to create foundational technologies that are interoperable, that can be used by everybody to ensure that they can trust each other. And the way that we have accomplished that, and we continue to work in the area, is to create transparency in the system so that each participant knows enough, has enough information about the partners that they work with, or the digital ecosystem partners that transact on the open real-time bidding systems, that they can freely transact with them in confidence. So that's what we are going to talk about today, and what are these standards, what are these technologies. But of course, we have participants from the different parts of the ecosystem. Like Shivendra explained, we have a publisher, we have sellers, we have buyers, and we have the supply side platforms who will go a bit deeper into, beyond the standards, what do their companies do to ensure trust and transparency in the ecosystem. So we'll get started right away. I want to welcome Harguneet Singh. Harguneet, you want to go ahead and give a little bit more introduction about yourself, the company Pubmatic, and the role that you play in the company?
Thanks, Shailley. Absolutely. I'm Shivan as well. I'm Harguneet. I'm the Director for Customer Success at Programmatic. My team and I work with the publishers from the India market. We help them better monetize their content across different formats and platforms, and help them compete and make the maximum yield possible. And also at the same time, we ensure that all the inventory has the highest quality of trust and transparency in place as well. So that's pretty much what my team and I work on.
Thank you. So my first question to you is, as a supply side optimization platform that helps publishers monetize, what does transparency mean to you and to your company?
Sure. So transparency is essentially the backbone of all things programmatic. I think in the last few years, we have all seen certain issues that have crept up in the ecosystem. And because of that, there has been a lot of cleaning that has happened in some of these dark corners. And I think the supply side platforms have led the way in this to a large extent. And I think Pubmatic has also been a part of that. And Iab Tech Labs as well. I think there have been multiple specs that have been released, whether it's things like ads.txt, apads.txt, sellers.json, and supply chain object. These are the kind of specs that Pubmatic has used, leveraged, and taken live across the platform. So some of these things. We also strive to be the SSP of choice and of the highest quality possible. So yeah, I think some of that. So just to give you an example, would be when something like an apads.txt went live. We were amongst the first early adopters. We worked with publishers and developers to ensure that they go ahead and create the required file, have our entries and the required entries for their monetization. There was a bit of hand-holding there. We were able to showcase and also ensure that the DSPs are only buying where the entries are available. This then makes the transparency piece a lot more and builds trust as well. And I'm very happy to say that at this point in time, I think about 99% of all our impressions on the platform are apads.txt compliant, and that helps the publishers as well as the buyers and advertisers. So a lot of stuff like that, yeah.
From a Pubmatic perspective, why is it so important to have this transparency, and what kind of transparency this is that helps build trust with the buyers?
So absolutely, I think it's the backbone, of the entire industry, like I said, and there have been certain bad actors who have kind of caused concerns in the past. So we're trying to work and ensure that we keep the system as clean as possible. Just to give you a small anecdote, I think back in 2017, 2018, when ads.txt itself was launched, we were able to get that adoption in place. And the fraudsters, or the different kinds of bad actors, they tend to be ahead of the system. So at a particular point in time, Double Verify reported that I think in 2018, in-app fraud rates in in-app had actually grown 800% year on year. So in that particular scenario, Pubmatic, what we also did was, when the apads.txt spec came into place, we leveraged that as well, like I was saying previously, and that creates that creates the trust both on the publisher's end, because if there's any malpractice or anything of that sort happening on the publisher side, the publisher always loses the revenue, and the buyer then does not get ROI as well. So it's always best to ensure that any kind of spoofing or any kind of bad activity is taken care of. We also went a step forward, and we launched something called as the fraud-free program. This was earlier in 17-18, wherein we work with buyers, and we ensure that if there is any kind of fraud activity that they see, we ensure that they don't pay for it, and we work with those pieces of supply to try and clear that out as soon as possible.
So one other question I had for you was like, so this is some of the work that we are trying to do with standards that get you to a base level of foundation to create the transparency. What else does Pubmatic do over and above that to support their publishers as well as their buyers?
Oh, awesome, Shailley. I'm glad you asked that. So, like IAB has all of these specs that you guys keep launching. I will ask you some questions on that as well. So, in terms of additional things that we do have a global inventory quality team, which looks at pretty much any and every dimension that is possible to ensure that the pipes are as clean, from the supply perspective, and what we send out to buyers and advertisers. We leverage multiple third parties and certain in-house tools as well to identify any bad actors. We have multiple daily reporting reviews. We have automation in place for some of these things. Some of these things even go through manual reviews. If anything of this sort is identified, we work with the publisher or the developer and try to resolve it. We put in a timeline in place. We try to help them with the same. Also, if a DSP brings something to our notice, we also work with the DSP and work with the publisher or any source of inventories to resolve that. To be very honest, we take this very seriously. So if within the speculated time, if something is identified and not resolved, we also then look at possibly pausing the traffic, pausing the inventories, or especially if it's a reseller or a channel partner, as the industry calls it. We then try to ensure that those inventories are taken off from the platform. To give you a small example, I think last year there was a pretty large CTV scam that was identified in the US. It was basically on different apps which monetize Roku video content, CTV content. And our teams had manually, as well as using multiple tools, identified certain issues. There were hours and hours of video content available, and there was wallpapers, ringtones, and these developers were getting such kinds of traffic, very massive amounts of traffic. However, all the video content that they had was about 50 odd years old from the US, and they were able to spoof a lot of stuff and generate revenues. However, our teams were able to nip it in the bud, and we never let that inventory onto our platform. So there's a lot of manual as well as automation that we do on these fronts. Coming to the question that I wanted to put forth for you, we know that IAB has built multiple standards. I think two primary areas in the transparency piece is around the authorization and authentication. Do you want to quickly just talk about some of these in detail or briefly?
Yeah. Happy to answer that question. So yeah, like Harguneet said, that we have been developing standards to kind of address the full workflow of the ecosystem, starting right from when a buyer wants to plan which media they want to buy, as well as to ensure that they're verifying that during the transaction that they are actually buying what they intended to buy. Ultimately, like the buyer objective is to have the eyes and ears of the consumer in the context or in the media that they intend to. So we have the framework that we're following is authorization, authentication, and verification. So authorization starts with publishers declaring the source of truth, which is basically the ads.txt specification, which allows a publisher to declare who can sell their inventory on the internet. So this basically helps the buyer understand that if they're buying something from a particular partner and the source is the right source and a valid source, and it stops what was a common form of fraud earlier was called domain spoofing or misrepresenting inventory by the sellers. So that was very harmful, especially for premium publishers. If somebody is, some blog or somebody there is being sold off as, say, timesofindia.com or hindustantimes.com or something like that. Of course, that commands a premium pricing. So buyers were being spoofed into paying a higher price. So ads.txt specification, along with the cross-check of it with the sellers.json, these two specifications help address this kind of misrepresentation of inventory on the programmatic systems. The next is something that we introduced very recently. Like it's not enough to just know that you're buying from the right source. You also want to make sure that in real time that this is the real source or this is the right entity. So for that, we have introduced something called ads.cert, which is a cryptographic method of signing your transactions so that I can authenticate, I can know that it is really who you are. And then the third step is, finally confirming at the time the ad is actually shown or delivered to the user, which is what we call verification. That is, so the buyer knows that the ad was actually delivered. It was delivered on the site that they intended to buy the ad from, and it was actually seen by the user. So we have the open measurement SDK there that we've created, which creates this scalable and consistent manner to confirm the delivery. It provides the data like the impression actually happened, the ad actually started rendering on the site or the app, and then it was actually on screen and in view of the user. So that's kind of the framework that we have for what we call the sell side transparency.
Awesome. Sounds super interesting. Was there anything on the buy side as well that you guys are working on?
Yes, this is another. So we covered the sell side transparency over the last two to 3 years, and then there was also a demand from publishers that we need to protect our consumers from bad type of ads, like ads that are promoting scams or ads that are promoting bad behavior on the website, or hijacking the user, or pulling them into some kind of a scam behavior. So for that, we created the buy-side transparency. It's called buyers.json, where all the buying platforms declare clearly the ID or the identity of the advertiser who's sending the ad, so that when you encounter bad behavior, you're able to address it directly with the entity or be able to block them across all different buying platforms.
Interesting.
Anything else, Harguneet? I would now like to invite the other panelists into the discussion. So please welcome Pranjal, Anushrav, and Chintan.
Hey guys, hi everybody.
Okay. So let's start with the more detailed introductions for all of you. Pranjal, do you want to take it away?
Sure, thanks, Shailley. Hi everyone, my name is Pranjal Desai. I head the MediaMath India business. MediaMath is a omni-channel DSP that basically helps all the marketeers to deliver effective and efficient programmatic campaigns across all kinds of channels that you can think of. So that's a short one from me.
Chintan?
Yeah. So hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay. Hi everyone. This is Chintan. I'm from Madison. I'm heading the entire tech initiative at Madison in the area of analytics, attribution, ad fraud, measurability, data, and a lot of other tech initiatives. So if you come to Madison ever, transparency as a word is written actually on the walls of Madison. So this becomes actually a pretty interesting session to give my 2 bits here. So that's me.
Anushrav?
Yeah, hi. So my name is Anushrav. I represent Times Internet, and I lead the entire programmatic monetization indirect revenues for Times Internet, along with our homegrown stack, which is Columbia. And we also look after our sister concerns in terms of programmatic establishment, ad stack setup. So by and large, yeah, that's me.
Right.
Welcome, guys.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining once again and taking the time out. My first question to all of you is what I asked Harguneet to start with is what does transparency mean to you and your organization? Anushrav, do you want to get us started on that?
Yeah. Sure. So I think it's a pretty elaborate and tricky question that can go to any length, but I'll try and sort of bring it down to 2 important points as we look at it. And I think they are both sort of interrelated as well from a publisher's perspective. I think the biggest thing that we as a publisher, I mean, I work with multiple publishers across in similar roles and responsibilities. And it has been our primary concern always is to figure out, how much are we getting, paid for the inventory that we are plugging into the ecosystem? What is the fair value of the inventory? To summarize, to phrase it differently, for every dollar that is being spent on our supplies, on whatever we are plugging into the system, how much we are actually getting paid for? Most of the times you just end up being told, this was your fill, this was your eCPM, and that's it. But how much actually, where the dollar started from and how much has it reached to the end of the spectrum? I think that is not something which is very clear across the pipes. And this is something that we want to, or we consider as an important part of transparency for us. The second aspect in this case is I think it overlaps the first point, but also from a buyer's perspective. We also want to better understand the ecosystem in the sense that if we are plugging in our supply through multiple pipes, to multiple exchanges, various partners in the ecosystem, SSPs, at times DSPs, exchanges, various layers, we think that it would be better if we are able to build, a complete view of the ecosystem, at least at a narrow level, to understand as to how a buyer or an exchange is buying our supplies, in the sense what all various pipes are there which are providing the supply across to the for the same impression, for example, to the exchange or to the DSP. Because see, I was so happy listening to the previous conversation between you and Harguneet as to the initiatives taken, because I think somewhere those things are also our primary concerns. If we're able to gel well, we should be able to find a solution from longer term for the entire fraternity. As to if the buy side is looking for the best ROI for the impression or the cost they're spending, they would be better served by publishers if we are able to build a platform saying, what, this is the best way of passing our supply to you. Please take this pipe and take it forward. I think these two major points.
Basically, the supply path optimization that all buyers try to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Pranjal, do you, as a major buying platform, what does transparency mean to you?
So Anushrav has given the sell side perspective. I'll bring in the marketeers or the buy side perspective on transparency. For MediaMath, we feel that transparency is an ecosystem which is 100% accountable, addressable, and aligned, not only from a buy side perspective, but across the entire supply chain. So from a marketeer's perspective, I feel that, anything that is transparent needs to give buyers a very clear view of where all their media spends are going. Once you have that view, they should know that the ads that are being shown are actually shown to real people and not to bots. Once that is done, they should exactly know, what they are paying for, and in a way measure an ROI on all their investments. And from that ROI perspective, I feel also comes the sell side perspective, where Anushrav rightly said, that every publisher or a vendor should actually receive a fair share of the entire advertising revenue of that entire supply chain pie. So that, I think, from a very nutshell perspective, is how we view transparency. And we'll talk a little bit more on how MediaMath is committed to kind of continuously offer the best products or partners to our clients to provide the transparency that they are looking at.
Thank you, Chintan. As the person who holds the purse strings, so to say, what is your expectation on transparency from the ecosystem?
Sure, Shailley, so I'll just try to give you a little different perspective, not from the digital point of view, but from the overall AdX point of view. So let's say if we take India, the total AdX right now is standing at somewhere around 75,000 crore. Out of that, if we take the, let's say, a digital ad spend, will be somewhere around 25,000 odd crore. Now, if you look at the, about 60 to 75% of the spend that still happens in India in the traditional advertising, which means your print, radio, television. Now, transparency for us actually means, two things. One is at a pre-eval, when I'm actually planning my campaign. I need to know the complete clarity, where my ads are going to be placed. So for example, in TV, I know on what time my spot is going to be aired, what is the rating that a spot is going to get. So same I would actually expect from the video advertising on the digital world. Now, when it comes to basically display advertising, again in print, if I want to give you an analogy, I know at what is the cost per centimeter I'm paying, whether it is a front page ad or whether it's a back page ad or something like that, whether it is coming at the half of the page or it is a full page ad that I'm actually buying. So at a pre-planning stage, I need to have a complete clarity, what I'm going to actually buy and where my ad is actually going to be placed. At a post eval, I need to know the impression by impression tracking, that where my ad was actually shown. And I would like to actually ideally avoid any kind of a source from where I'm buying the inventory where it is not giving me a clarity, or where it is delivering the ads in the unknown territory. So I basically we do this very active monitoring, and wherever we find such inventories or some sort of those sources, we immediately block those sources. So that is like, it's a paramount of importance, because we handle like both sides of the world very well.
Okay, thank you, Chintan. Harguneet, I think you already answered this question, but if you'd like to add anything, please go ahead.
No, I think I've already shared my thoughts, and it's very interesting to hear everybody's points on that as
well. The next question I had was like basically something I asked Harguneet earlier also, like what from your perspective is the need for this transparency? Chintan, do you want to?
Yeah, so I think, okay, now if I further break down this 25,000 crore of investment that happens in digital, again, there are spends that happens in the performance side of the campaign, and there are spend that happens actually to build your brand or to build that consideration scores up. So if I give you a clear perspective, I don't think advertisers are very evolved when it comes to performance marketing. All they actually care about is a last mile optimization, that what is my cost per lead, what is my cost per sale coming. They don't care much about where my ad is actually going to get placed. Either is it actually going somewhere in the bottom of the fold, or is it actually coming on the top of the fold? Is it a text ad? Is it a display ad? It doesn't matter. Just deliver the performance. The job is done. But when it comes to actually branding campaign, that's where it actually start gaining a lot of importance, because your only ROI is the impression that you actually serve. The moment, let's say, if there is a even 8 to 10% actually deficiency that happens, even like from the total number of impressions that you plan, it impacts the overall campaign efficacy to a great extent. So we try to basically minimize the entire number of impressions that gets delivered on the publisher side.
Right. Thank you. Thanks for that great overview and breakdown of different types of needs based on the type of advertising. Pranjal, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so just adding on to what Chintan mentioned about branding versus performance, we do see a very similar behavior given that we are a buy-side platform. But transparency overall, and hence transparency is very crucial in building that trust, right? There needs to be zero tolerance in terms of either it's ad fraud or it's just bad actors or it's brand unsafe content, which is on the entire programmatic supply chain. So I feel that the question then boils down to what exactly is transparency, right? It's like a big umbrella, and there are so many different facets to it when we are talking about transparency. And I feel that in order to provide that transparency, we need to provide all those information about all those different dimensions that touch upon in the programmatic supply chain, so that the marketeers can get a better view of what's really happening. And then the next step there would be to actually help the marketeers understand what those dimensions stand for and how to make media decisions based on those dimensions. So once we kind of understand that what goals the marketeers are looking to achieve, that is when we can start helping them to kind of decipher the dimensions and look at it from that perspective. So I feel once we start giving, as an ecosystem, once we start helping each other on those fronts, that is when that trust will start getting built. That is when people will start working together rather than working in silos to build that that trust for the entire ecosystem being a transparent one.
Thank you. Anushrav, do you have more thoughts on that from a publisher perspective?
Yeah, so see, in my opinion, when we talk about words like trust and transparency, I think it's generally the same meaning. Whether we are talking about a personal relationship or whether we are talking about the ecosystem here. In my opinion, I think having established sellers or suppliers or publishers as a more involved party in the whole game rather than just being the sources of inventory would go a long way, because what it would do is it would, once we get more information about, see what's the pain points, if say MediaMath or Madison is facing a problem or Pubmatic is continuously struggling with some sort of supply base or impressions we send out, which probably lead into a IVT or a clawback, or say the viewability is down or something like that. While we as publisher, we have taken more control of these facets of late, but having involved the entire fraternity in a more aggressive fashion, I think is going to make things much simpler for everyone, because till now publishers in at least Indian ecosystem have taken a more passive sort of role where we have just created supplies, plugged into various exchanges and kept it there and just wait for monies to come in. We do some sort of optimization on pricing, do some cleanups on inventory, but not really probably that is good enough with respect to how accountability is done by an SSP or a DSP or an agency to the advertiser who's really spending the money, right? So the challenges then a media planner is facing for delivering a poor impression, probably if a publisher is made cognizant of those challenges, I think we can do much better job in terms of cleaning up the information or the ecosystem. What it would do is probably it is not only going to clean the ecosystem to a larger level, because we are the root of where all the inventories are being generated, right? It would also help publishers also in terms of driving better CPMs, and it will eventually come to a level where people would understand that it is not that you have to smatter your pages with ads everywhere. You have to build in quality inventory, high viewability, good quality, high performing ads, like Chintan said and like Pranjal said, right? The core of everything is performance. At the end of the day, whether you run a CPM campaign or performance campaign, maybe except for a few branding and teaser campaigns, everybody wants CTRs or leads. And better the inventory, I think better is it for everyone. Publishers get higher CPMs, higher revenues, and the infrastructure cost on the DSP and other sites goes away, because they have to not probably worry about 15 duplicated impressions coming for each ad impression that I am generating. I think those things are pretty valid if we are able to bring in a little more education and rigor across the supply chain.
Okay, so education is important in addition to
I think more
transparency.
information flow. I think now the publishers have become smarter in India, and all of us. I mean, I would rather not say for everyone. Probably, I have learned a lot in this line for the last 1 year or 2 years maybe. And I think now what we need more of is information, right? Rather than just a data point saying that 1% of your traffic was IVT and there is a $1,500 drawback, for example. We rather want to know what went wrong and how to fix it, right? We are not deliberately building a bad supply ecosystem, but if there is an external factor with a ill intent trying to play something which is not we are not aware of, maybe being informed will help us reinforce the quality.
Right. So yeah, so transparency not just to just support the transactional purpose, but also to improve for future. So
Absolutely.
that brings me to my next question. Like all of you, I mean, you do rely on our standards that we talked about earlier, but I'm pretty sure you take extra steps, especially like MediaMath. I know has very specific programs for trust and transparencies. Pranjal, do you want to provide us an overview of how MediaMath goes beyond just the technical standards?
Yep, absolutely. In fact, Shailley, I was almost about to intervene and say that this is a very good segue in what Anushrav is talking about, because it kind of ties very well in what MediaMath as a DSP is doing from a source initiative perspective. So In terms of our commitment to the transparency for the whole ecosystem, MediaMath has built a source initiative where we work with all our leading technology partners to make sure that we are delivering a transparent supply chain. And how we do that is that we publish something called as a source scorecard, which is intended to grade all the suppliers on their compliance with three principles. The first one being accountability, the second one being addressability, and the third one being alignment. I'll take a couple of more minutes to kind of go through each of these pillars so that it is much more clear in terms of how we are doing that and how it will benefit the entire ecosystem. So when we talk about accountable, there are three sub-pillars or three different parameters on which we grade our supply partners. The first one being free transparency method, where we grade our supply partners in terms of how transparent they are across all the different buying modalities and impressions, or how clear view they provide to us in terms of all the reporting that gets generated. The second parameter on accountable is supply authorization. So what we do there is we see whether the supply partners adhere to the IAB supply chain specifications, which include support for sellers.json, the supply chain object, the ads.txt, all these three aspects. And then the third parameter on accountable is the inventory type. So what we check for is whether there is bitstream support for passing the specific inventory values, such as, let's just say if it's a video inventory, is the bitstream passing things like placement type, or whether the inventory is skippable or not. So all these three parameters, it's increasing transparency in the system because now the marketers know much more about the supply that is coming through. So this is the accountable pillar that we talk about. The next pillar is addressable. Again, there are three parameters that we have in the addressable pillar. The first one being fraud and invalid traffic, where basically we check whether there is an active pre-bid invalid traffic filtering happening with the proper vendors which are available in the market. The second parameter lies on preferred identity, which means what we check for is whether the bitstream support is there for passing the user ID from an approved identity partner cohort. And then the third one on addressable is about the unique channel identifiers, which again there's a bitstream support check, which we see if they are passing the addressable identifiers. So for example, if it's a CTV inventory, we check whether an IP address is getting passed or not. So those are the three parameters which we check for from an addressability perspective. And then the last pillar is on align, which means the first parameter is about the bit feedback. So what we see is there bitstream support for passing the minimum bid to win, the bid loss reason, etc. So that gives more transparency in terms of why a particular bid is why did we win a particular bid or we lost it. The second parameter is on brain sync, which is basically MediaMath's algorithm, which is not a brain. We try to see if there is an ability to ingest and utilize MediaMath's performance signals so that the traffic tailoring can be made from the supply side to send the right kind of traffic for a particular type of demand. And then the third parameter is on the impression counting method. Basically, we check for how the impressions are being counted on the supply side, whether the impression counting is done based on the ad vendors as per what the MRC accredited methodology is. So all these, all these 9 parameters basically together, we publish a source scorecard every month. Rate all our supply partners on all of these 9 parameters, come up with like a gross score from a 1 to 10, and that helps our advertisers to grade different supply partners on those 9 variables and to check what is the most important for them amongst all of these 9 variables, so that then they can start doing their SEO strategies in terms of which supply to go for or which to go for. So that's kind of detail that we have got here. And just to add there, The
Yeah,
last
we
bit
got
I
the
want
time. I just
I know,
wanted to do
I
a
know.
time check.
I know. The
Thank you.
last
Those
word I
are
want to
great
add, Shailley, is
tips.
that Pubmatic has been a very early partner in our source program and has been consistently rated amongst like the top ones in the scorecard.
Yeah. I think those and what you outlined is a great set of tips for anybody who wants to make sure there's a transparent and quality supply maintained, and it's a good blueprint.
Sherry,
Um,
I'd just like to add one point on that. I won't take much time. So just to from a SSP's perspective or from a platform's perspective, so Anushrav mentioned that there are certain other things that publishers as well as other folks can do. So this is where the SSP plays a very important part. So the SSPs like Pubmatic do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to certain, whether it's bitstream parameters validation or whether it's maintaining sellers.json and stuff like that. So that's where we also add a lot more value. And when required, we do work and reach out to publishers to smoothen out those things as well. So yeah, back to you.
all right. Thank you, everyone. I think our host is back because we are kind of slightly over time, but this is a topic that we could go deeper and spend a whole day discussing. And thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Shailley. Thank you to all the panelists. You're absolutely right. Programmatic is something that we can keep on talking about for hours and hours. And like it's very visible, there are many questions as well. Unfortunately, due to the time constraint, we'll have to end the session. But thank you again to all the panelists for an amazing session. Very intriguing, very interesting, and very informative. Thank you to the audiences for making this such a great interactive session. We will definitely look at some of the questions and probably offline take them up. Thank you and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.